The evening was elegant, just as it always had been, a long table covered in cream-colored linens stretched across the private banquet hall, crystal glasses glimmering under the soft glow of the chandeliers. The scent of seared steak and aged whiskey lingered in the air, mixing with the sound of laughter. Their laughter. My family. My parents, uncles, aunts, and cousins sat at the table, raising their glasses in toasts, indulging in a meal that I had unknowingly funded. I had stepped away for a business call thinking nothing of it. But when I returned, I stopped behind the heavy mahogany doors, my fingers tightening against the frame as I overheard a conversation that shattered me. She's too naive to realize it. We only keep her around for her money? My dad's voice rang out casual and dripping with arrogance. The room erupted in laughter. Honestly, I thought she would have figured it out by now. My mom sighed, swirling her wine. But no, our little fool just keeps paying for everything, happy to be included, a few of my cousins chuckled. It's pathetic, one of my uncles scoffed. She actually thinks she's part of this family. At that moment, I felt like the floor beneath me had disappeared, like I was falling into a void with no way to stop it. The warmth of the evening vanished, replaced by a cold, suffocating dread curling around my ribs like a vice. I had spent years working tirelessly, building my business from nothing, sacrificing sleep, relationships, and peace of mind, all while thinking that maybe, just maybe, my family was finally proud of me, but they never were. I was never their equal, never their success story. I was just a means to an end. I wasn't their daughter, their niece, their cousin. I was their walking bank account. The truth settled into my bones heavy and unbearable. I could feel the edges of betrayal cutting into me like glass, sharp, unexpected, leaving wounds that I wasn't sure would ever heal. I could have stormed in demanding an explanation. I could have screamed, flipped the table, thrown my wine in my father's smug face, but that would have given them exactly what they expected from me. A reaction, an emotional outburst, proof that I was as foolish as they believed me to be. So I forced myself to breathe, swallowing the fire burning up my throat. If they thought I was too dumb to see the truth, then I would let them think that, because they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I smoothed my dress, adjusting my posture, and stepped back into the banquet hall. "Everything okay?" my mom asked sweetly. Her expression unreadable, like she hadn't just driven a knife through my chest. I nodded, keeping my face blank. "Just a business call," I replied smoothly. My dad gave an approving nod. "That's my girl, always working." "That's why you're successful," I clenched my jaw, forcing down the bitter laughter bubbling up inside me. "You mean that's why you're successful?" I sat down, letting them carry on with their deception, pretending I was still their clueless little golden goose. But inside the clock had already started ticking, and they had no idea what was coming for them. The conversation at the table shifted effortlessly. Vacations, luxury watches, stock market trends. They spoke in boastful tones, their words dripping with entitlement. None of them had ever worked for any of it. They lived off my success, parading their stolen wealth as if it were their own. I had spent years thinking that by funding their lavish lifestyle, I was somehow earning my place in this family, that if I gave enough, proved my worth enough, they would finally accept me. But that was a lie. And now they would pay this price for their greed. I lifted my wine glass to my lips, but instead of drinking, I let the liquid swirl inside, watching its deep red hue dance in the candlelight. Enjoy it while you can, because soon it will all be ripped away. The next morning, I didn't hesitate. I picked up the phone and called my financial advisor, Daniel. "I want to remove all family members from shared accounts effective immediately." There was a brief pause on the other end. "Are you sure?" Daniel asked cautiously. "That includes all of them?" I didn't even blink. "Every single one," I said, my voice like steel freeze. "All the cards except mine. If they try to use them, decline the transactions. Understood?" And just like that, their illusion of wealth began to crumble. By afternoon, my father's name lit up my phone. I let it ring twice before picking up, feigning casual indifference. "What is going on?" he barked. The second I answered, "My card was declined at the golf club." I frowned, keeping my voice neutral. Really? That's strange. Don't play games with me, he snapped. Fix it now. I exhaled, pretending to think. I'll look into it, I said smoothly. I didn't. Instead, I sat back and watched the cracks start to form. A week later, I attended a high-profile charity gala, an event that my family had only been able to attend because of me. They arrived draped in designer brands, laughing as if nothing had changed. They had no idea that tonight would be the night their world collapsed. When it was my turn to speak, I walked up to the stage, my heels clicking against the polished floor. I took a deep breath, let my gaze sweep across the audience, and smiled. It's an honor to be here tonight, and I want to thank those who supported me. Not because they wanted something from me, but because they believed in me. The room fell silent. At my family's table, I saw my parents stiffen. I turned, letting my gaze linger on my father before I continued. Unfortunately, I've also learned that some people only love you when you're useful to them. A ripple of whispers spread through the audience. I let the words settle, then delivered the final blow. So as of today, I am cutting all financial ties with those who took advantage of my success. Gasps, murmurs. I watched as my mother's knuckles turned white against the tablecloth. It was done. The applause that followed felt like thunder in my chest, drowning out the sound of my family's world crumbling. The next morning, my phone was flooded with missed calls and unread messages, all from my parents. I didn't answer. Instead, I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee, the rich aroma filling the air. Outside my window, the city bustled, a world moving forward while my family's empire burned to the ground. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling as I watched the chaos unfold. By noon, my mother's name flashed on my screen again. I smiled. This time I picked up, "Hello?" I answered, my voice indifferent, calm, a sharp intake of breath. Then she exploded. "How dare you?" she screeched. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" The bank froze. "Our accounts. Our cards are getting declined. We can't even get into our country club." Her words tumbled over each other, frantic, dripping with rage and desperation. I swirled my coffee in my mug, leaning back in my chair as if I had all the time in the world. "Oh, that's strange," I said, my tone eerily similar to hers from the night at the banquet hall, the night she mocked me. A heavy silence. Then my father's voice boomed from the background. "Fix this now." I almost laughed. Even now, with everything crumbling around them, he still spoke to me like I was a child, like I owed them something. I tapped my fingers idly against the table, savoring the moment. "I don't think I will." Silence. For the first time in my life, my parents had nothing to say. Then my mother's voice softened, shifting into a sickly, sweet tone. "Darling," she cooed, desperate to regain control. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Why don't we sit down and—" I cut her off. I heard everything. Her breath hitched. This silence was different, heavier, laden with realization. "What?" she whispered. I let the words settle before delivering the final blow. "I was standing behind you at the family dinner." Another pause. I could almost hear her mind racing, trying to backtrack, trying to rewrite history. "I heard you all, every single word." I could picture her now, her fingers probably tightly clutching the phone, her lips pressed together in shock. From the other end of the line, my father muttered something under his breath, then cleared his throat, reaching for control. "Look, sweetheart, you're overreacting. Overreacting." That was their defense. I let out a dry, humorless laugh, joking. I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "That's funny because you didn't sound like you were joking when you called me an idiot, when you said I was only useful for my money." A beat of silence. "No, no, honey," I hung up. I let them stew in their panic because this was only the beginning of their downfall. By the end of the day, their world was unraveling. Luxury cars repossessed. Lavish country club membership revoked. The mansion they flaunted for years. A final warning from the bank. Without my money paying their mortgage, they'd lose it within weeks. And the best part, the so-called friends who had flocked to them when they were dripping in wealth, they vanished. I watched as their once pristine lives turned into a nightmare of desperate phone calls, ignored voicemails, and closed doors. For years they had looked down on me. For years they had mocked me behind my back. And now the entire world was laughing at them. I should have felt pure satisfaction. But there was something else. Something deeper. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about freedom. I had spent my whole life chasing their approval, desperate to be accepted, thinking that if I just gave enough, they would finally love me. But in the end, I had given them everything, and it was never enough. Now they had nothing, and for the first time in my life, I had everything. I didn't think things could get worse for them. But then the media caught on. After my announcement at the gala, whispers spread across the upper class circles, whispers that turned into rumors, and rumors that turned into headlines. Self-made entrepreneur cuts ties with family. After years of financial abuse, billionaire heiress exposes her own parents. They only kept me around for my money. The same people my parents had spent their whole lives trying to impress, the same high society elite. They had sacrificed everything to climb towards. They were now the laughingstock. Their business acquaintances stopped returning their calls, their invitations to exclusive events revoked. They had spent decades clawing their way up the social ladder, and in a matter of days they had fallen further than they ever imagined. The people who once flocked around them, eager to bask in the illusion of their wealth and influence, were now mocking them, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Weeks passed, their house gone, their designer clothes and jewelry pawned off to pay debts, their precious country club membership revoked, not that they could afford it anymore. The once arrogant, untouchable couple who had looked down on me for years, the same people who had sneered at my success while spending my money, were now drowning in debt. I should have felt pity, but I didn't, because even after losing everything, they still thought they could manipulate me. One evening, my father showed up at my office. He looked different. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by a worn-out blazer that barely fit his frame. His face was hollow, his once sharp features now weathered with stress and exhaustion. The prideful man who used to walk with his head out, always looking down on everyone, now stood hunched, defeated. For a brief moment, a flicker of something pity, nostalgia, sadness rose in my chest. Then I remembered everything. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" He let out a rehearsed sigh, the kind someone practices in the mirror before trying to win someone over, sweetheart. He said, his voice carefully measured. "We made a mistake. We should have treated you better." I raised an eyebrow. "Should have?" He hesitated. "What I mean is, we were wrong to—" I cut him off. "If you're here to apologize, say it outright." His jaw clenched. I waited, but the words never came. Because he wasn't actually sorry, he just wanted me to fix his mess. I exhaled sharply. "I see you don't actually regret what you did. You regret getting caught." His face darkened, and just like that, the act dropped. "You ungrateful little—" I laughed, shaking my head. "There it is, the real you?" His expression twisted in anger. "After everything we've done for you?" I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. "What exactly did you do for me?" Silence. I nodded. "That's what I thought." Then I stood up. "You need to leave." His mouth opened, maybe to argue, maybe to demand, maybe to lash out, but no words came out. For the first time in his life, my father had no power, and I had all of it. My mother's turn. The next day, my mother tried a different approach. She sobbed over the phone, her voice trembling with just the right amount of misery, but not for what she had done. "I miss you," she whimpered. "I love you. Family should stick together." I let her cry, let her pour out her carefully crafted guilt trip, let her lay the foundation for yet another manipulation. Then when she had finished, I asked, "If you miss me so much, why did you laugh while calling me an idiot?" Dead silence. A silence so thick, so damning it might as well have been a confession. I smiled, thought so, and I hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to them. The next day, my mother tried a different approach. She sobbed over the phone, her voice trembling with just the right amount of misery, but not for what she had done. "I miss you," she whimpered. "I love you. Family should stick together." I let her cry, let her pour out her carefully crafted guilt trip, let her lay the foundation for yet another manipulation. Then when she had finished, I asked, "If you miss me so much, why did you laugh while calling me an idiot?" Dead silence. A silence so thick, so damning it might as well have been a confession. The days after I cut off my parents were eerily quiet. No more text messages, no more entitled demands, no more fake warmth from a mother who had only ever seen me as a means to an end. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't begging for their validation. I was free. Yet, as I sat in my penthouse, overlooking the city skyline, watching the lights flicker below, I realized that freedom wasn't just about cutting them off. It was about finally letting go. I couldn't shake the feeling that this silence was temporary. People like my parents, they never gave up without a fight. And I knew the storm was coming. It started with a letter delivered to my office in a gold-trimmed envelope, one of the last relics of their former arrogance. I recognized my father's elegant, looping handwriting. For a moment, I debated tossing it directly into the shredder, but curiosity won. I unfolded the thick, expensive paper and read the words dripping with desperation. My dearest daughter, we may have had our misunderstandings, but family is family. You have made your point, and we respect that. However, this cannot continue. People are talking. We are being humiliated. If you do not fix this, you will regret it. Let's be reasonable. Let's discuss this. Like adults come home, your loving father. I let out a bitter laugh. Regret it. They still thought they had leverage over me. Still thought they could scare me into coming back. They didn't understand. The old me was gone. So I took the letter, crumpled it in my fist, and dropped it into the trash. Let them suffer. I owed them nothing. 2 weeks passed. That's when the real chaos began. I was scrolling through my phone when I saw it. A viral video. My father red-faced, ranting and trembling with rage outside a country club. She's ungrateful after everything we did for her. A child should respect their parents. We raised her, we made her who she is, and now she's punishing us. We're her family, people in the background whispered, watching his public breakdown. Even the reporters looked uncomfortable. Then my mother stepped forward, her crocodile tears shimmering under the camera lights. We only ever wanted the best for her. She sobbed, and she abandoned us. What kind of daughter does that? I stared at my phone, my grip tightening. A slow rage bubbled in my chest. This was their final trick, playing victims, turning the world against me. But they underestimated one thing. The truth was on my side. That same night I made my move. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began to type. A simple statement. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just cold, undeniable facts. I was standing behind my parents at a family dinner when they laughed about how stupid I was, how they only kept me around for my money. I heard every word. They have used me for years. I have no regrets about cutting them off. I pressed post. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. People weren't stupid. They saw right through my parents' lies. Comments flooded in. You don't owe them anything. Good for you. Stand your ground. Parents like this don't deserve forgiveness. And just like that, their final trick backfired. Days passed. My parents' reputation was in ruins. Their friends abandoned them. Their influence was dead. And that's when they made their last, pathetic attempt to pull me back in. I was sitting in my office when my assistant knocked. Your mother is here, she said hesitantly. She looks bad. I sighed. Of course she was. I could have turned her away. I should have. But a part of me, the part that still wanted closure, said, let her in, and so I did. My mother stepped into the office. Her usual air of superiority was gone. Her once perfect hair was disheveled, her eyes hollow, her designer clothes cheap and wrinkled. For the first time in my life, she looked small. She sat down across from me, her hands trembling. She opened her mouth, and then she sobbed. I don't know what to do, she whispered. We've lost everything. I watched her, waited. This was her moment. Her chance to say the one thing that might make me reconsider. I leaned forward, watching her face closely. I'm sorry, I said for her. She froze, her lip trembled, and then nothing. No apology, no remorse. Just silence. That was all I needed. I stood up, walked to the door, and held it open. You lost me too. She hesitated, looked at me one last time, then walked out. This time for good. True freedom is not about revenge, but about letting go. Those who only value you for what you can give were never truly family. Love should never be conditional. When people show you their true colors, believe them. Walking away isn't weakness, it's strength, and sometimes it's the only way to find peace.